I almost laughed. Unauthorized fencing? The only fence I had was a small wooden picket I installed myself, and I'd gotten approval in writing. But the problem was, they thought I was just some average homeowner who would get scared and comply. Big mistake. I leaned casually against the doorframe, meeting their eyes one by one. You know, I said calmly, I spent 2 decades dealing with men who thought intimidation was the way to get what they wanted. Pirates, warlords, criminals. You'd be surprised how similar you sound. Their faces flickered just for a second with unease. They weren't expecting resistance. They were expecting fear. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me or my neighborhood. But before I took action, I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. So I smiled politely, handed back their fake folder, and said, "Why don't you gentlemen come back tomorrow? I'd like a little time to review this." They nodded, relieved that they thought I was cooperating. But as they turned and walked down my driveway, I was already forming a plan. These weren't real HOA officers, they were scammers, and they had no idea whose door they had just knocked on. Tomorrow they'd come back. Tomorrow, they'd find out what it meant to mess with a Navy SEAL. The next morning, right on schedule, that same heavy knock rattled my front door. Only this time, it wasn't just 2 of them. A third man had joined, bigger, bulkier, trying to look like muscle. The first 2 wore the same fake polo shirts and badges, while the new guy just stood back with sunglasses on, arms crossed, trying to play the enforcer. They thought they were upping the intimidation game. I had spent the night reviewing their so-called documents. Every single page was riddled with inconsistencies. Wrong HOA letterhead, mismatched fonts, fake signatures. To anyone with half a brain, it screamed, scam. But here's the thing. Scammers don't usually try something this bold unless they've already succeeded with others, which meant my neighbors could be next. I opened the door slowly, keeping my posture relaxed. "Gentlemen," I greeted, calm as ever, "you're back. Let's hear what you've got today." The tall one cleared his throat. "We've reviewed your violations again. If you don't hand over the keys and vacate within 72 hours, the HOA will take legal possession of your home." 72 hours, I echoed. "That's generous of you." The bulky guy behind him stepped forward, lowering his sunglasses just enough to glare at me. "Don't play games, old man. You don't want this to get messy, old man." I almost chuckled. They had no idea who they were talking to. My age wasn't a weakness, it was experience, training, and discipline. I pretended to hesitate, as if their threats were working. "All right," I said carefully. "Let's do this properly. Why don't you show me some identification? Driver's license, state ID, something that proves you're who you say you are." The tall one snapped back quickly. "We don't need to show you anything. Our authority comes from the HOA board." There it was, the slip. Real officials always carry IDs. These guys had nothing. Time to push them. I straightened my shoulders and locked eyes with the so-called enforcer. My voice dropped lower, steadier. "Funny thing, I've been to every HOA board meeting for the last 5 years. I've never seen a single one of you there. Not once. And believe me, I don't forget faces." The short one shifted nervously. The tall one stammered, We're new hires. Just brought in for enforcement." "New hires?" I repeated, stepping closer. "Then why does your paperwork reference last year's board signatures? The board that resigned 6 months ago?" They froze. I had them. The enforcer tried to cover the silence. He leaned forward, trying to intimidate me with sheer size. "Listen, old man, just hand over the keys before we make you regret it." I held his stare without blinking. My Navy SEAL training had drilled one thing into me. Intimidation only works if you let it. Slowly, I leaned forward and whispered just loud enough for all 3 to hear. "You picked the wrong house." The enforcer's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. The other 2 looked shaken. I could see their confidence slipping, their scam unraveling. But I wasn't going to scare them off just yet. I wanted them to think they still had the upper hand. If I played it right, they'd reveal more, maybe even who was behind this whole scheme. So I stepped back, put on a fake smile, and said, "All right, Come back tomorrow with the proper paperwork. If everything checks out, maybe we'll talk about it." They exchanged quick glances, whispering to each other before turning away. The enforcer shot me one last glare, but none of them dared say another word. As they walked off, I closed the door and locked it. This wasn't just about me anymore. These men were predators, and I wasn't about to let them circle my neighborhood unchecked. Tomorrow they'd come again, and tomorrow I'd be ready. I reached for the phone and dialed an old contact from my Navy days, someone who owed me a favor. Someone who knew exactly how to deal with imposters. This wasn't going to be a negotiation anymore. This was going to be a takedown. The following day, I made sure to be up early. I'd already set up a small camera above my porch, angled just right to capture their faces and voices. If they tried their scam again, I'd have the evidence recorded. At exactly 9 a.m., like clockwork, the knock came again. This time it was louder, faster, more impatient. When I opened the door, the same three stood there, but now they carried clipboards and folders stuffed with even more forged paperwork. They thought that bringing props would make them look official. The tall one stepped forward. "We've given you time, Mr. Walker," he said, trying to sound firm. "Now, this is your final notice. If you don't vacate the property today, legal action will begin immediately." I crossed my arms. "Legal action?" I repeated. "In which court? Signed by which judge? Because I don't see a single case number on these documents." The shorter one quickly shoved a page toward me. "Right here. Look closer." I leaned in. The case number they had typed was nothing but random digits mixed with letters, no legal format at all. And the signature was the same as yesterday, copied and pasted onto every page. They were getting sloppy. I handed the page back. "Gentlemen, let me save you the trouble. These documents are fake. The HOA board never hired you, there's no legal case, and you have no authority here." The enforcer stepped up again, his face red with anger. "You think you're smart, old man? You think you can just ignore us? We've handled people like you before. They all end up leaving one way or another." That last line confirmed everything. This wasn't about rules or property violations. This was about intimidation and extortion. They had likely bullied someone else into paying them off or even walking away from their home. But this time, they'd run into the wrong homeowner. I kept my voice calm, controlled. "Let me tell you something. I've stood in the deserts of Iraq staring down warlords who wanted me dead. I've swum through freezing waters in the dead of night, facing enemies who didn't hesitate to kill. Do you really think I'm going to be scared by three men with fake badges and dollar store clipboards?" The tall one's composure cracked. You don't know who you're messing with." "Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with," I shot back. "Three cowards pretending to be something they're not." The enforcer lunged forward as if to push past me into the house. That's when my Navy SEAL instincts kicked in. I didn't strike him. I didn't have to. I simply stepped aside, pivoted, and used his momentum to send him stumbling off the porch and into the grass. He hit the ground hard, groaning. The other two froze in shock. I pointed to the hidden camera above my door. "Everything you just did? It's all recorded, including your threats, including your assault attempt. And unless you want the police to see this footage, you'll start talking. Right now. Who sent you?" The short one's face turned pale. He stammered, We just work for someone. We were paid to pressure homeowners. That's all I know." The tall one grabbed his arm, yanking him back. "Shut up," he hissed. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "I've got friends in law enforcement. I could make one call, and you'd all be in handcuffs before sundown. Or—" I paused, letting the silence sink in. "You can tell me everything, and maybe I'll let you walk away." The enforcer struggled back to his feet, rage burning in his eyes, but he didn't move again. He knew I had the upper hand. The tall one's lips tightened, but his bravado was fading fast. Finally, he muttered, "All right, fine. We'll tell you. But you're not going to like who's behind this." And just like that, the real story began to crack open. The taller man shifted uneasily, glancing at the enforcer as if hoping for backup. The enforcer just rubbed his shoulder from the fall and kept glaring at me, but the fight in his eyes had dimmed. He knew one wrong move and I'd put him back on the ground, harder this time. Finally, the shorter man broke. "It's not us," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "We were hired, paid in cash, told to scare you into leaving." I leaned in closer. "By who?" He hesitated, but the camera above my porch was still rolling. He knew if he lied, I'd catch it later. "It's a developer," he admitted at last. "Guy's been trying to buy up houses in this neighborhood for cheap. Can't build what he wants unless more people sell, so he figured if owners got scared, they'd move out and he could swoop in." A developer. That explained everything. The fake documents, the sudden appearance of HOA enforcers, and the pressure tactics. Someone with money was pulling their strings, hoping to bully hard-working families out of their homes. And now he was targeting mine. The tall one quickly cut in. "Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But his voice cracked, and I could see the fear creeping in. I crossed my arms. "So that's the game. Drive us out, buy cheap, build big, typical. But you made one mistake." The enforcer narrowed his eyes. "And what's that?" "You picked a house with a camera, a paper trail, and a homeowner who doesn't scare easy. And worse for you, one who knows how to fight back." Their confidence completely collapsed. The shorter one kept whispering that they should just leave. The tall one tried to salvage control, but even he knew it was over. I gave them a choice. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet me tomorrow, same time, same place. But this time you're bringing proof. Who hired you, how much he paid, and every detail you've got. If you don't show up, this footage goes straight to the police and the real HOA board." The enforcer opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off with a stare so sharp it froze him where he stood. He knew better. Reluctantly, the three of them turned and left, muttering under their breath. But I knew they'd be back. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. I held all the leverage now. That night, I prepared. Old habits kicked in. I double-checked the locks, ran a perimeter around my property, even set up a second hidden camera in case they tried something reckless. I wasn't just defending my house anymore. I was defending my entire neighborhood. If this developer thought he could push us out with scare tactics, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. As I sat at my kitchen table, sipping black coffee, I thought back to my days overseas. The principle was always the same. Identify the enemy, expose their weakness, and strike with precision. Tomorrow, the fakes would return. Tomorrow, I'd get the name I needed. And once I had that name, I'd bring the fight straight to the mastermind who thought he could steal our homes. The next morning came heavy with tension. I knew they'd show up. Fear or no fear, the leverage I had on them was too strong to ignore. Sure enough, at 9 a.m. sharp, the same knock echoed on my door. But this time, they looked different. The tall one's shoulders were slumped, the short one looked pale, and even the enforcer had lost his swagger. They knew the game was over. I opened the door slowly, making them sweat for a moment. Then I stepped aside, motioning for them to speak. The short one was the first to talk, his voice trembling. "Okay, look, we've got the proof." He handed me a small envelope stuffed with documents. Inside were bank slips, emails, and even a contract. And right there, in bold letters, was the name of the man behind it all, Richard Crane. Crane. I knew the name. A wealthy developer with a reputation for buying land by any means necessary. He'd been circling our neighborhood for months, disguising his intentions as urban improvement. Now the truth was clear. He was sending imposters to terrorize homeowners. The tall one spoke next, his tone broken. "We were told to scare people, make them believe the HOA would take their homes. Some gave in, some paid fees. We didn't know what we were getting into." I stared at them, my jaw tight. "You knew enough to threaten families, to bully innocent people. Don't act like you're the victims here." The enforcer shifted uncomfortably, his eyes dropping to the ground. For the first time, he had no comeback. I stepped forward, holding up the envelope. "Here's how this is going to play out. I'll be taking these documents to the HOA board and the police. I'll also be forwarding this footage," I pointed up at the porch camera, "to my contacts downtown. You three can either cooperate as witnesses or you can go down with Crane. Your choice." The short one nodded quickly. "We'll cooperate. We'll testify. Anything you need." I believed him. Fear had stripped them bare, and now survival was all they cared about. Within an hour, I was at the HOA board meeting. I laid the documents on the table, played the footage for everyone, and watched their jaws drop as the truth unfolded. The board wasted no time contacting law enforcement. By sundown, Richard Crane's name was plastered across half the county. Charges were filed: fraud, harassment, extortion. The man who thought he could scare us into submission was now facing years behind bars. As for the three imposters, they struck a deal, testifying against Crane in exchange for lighter sentences. Their days of pretending to be HOA officers were over. That evening, as I stood on my porch watching the sunset, neighbors came by one. Some had heard rumors, some had felt threatened themselves, but all of them had the same thing to say: "Thank you." I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because that's who I am. A SEAL doesn't back down from bullies. Not overseas, and not here at home. I smiled, taking in the quiet peace of the neighborhood. It felt like the calm I'd been fighting for all along. And to the camera still recording, I spoke the final words. Bullies think fear is a weapon, but the truth is, fear only works on those who allow it. If you're watching this, never let anyone intimidate you into giving up what's yours. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share your own experiences in the comments. Together, we'll keep the fight alive. The screen would fade to black, the story complete. But for me, the mission never ends. Because wherever there are people like Richard Crane, there will always need to be someone willing to stand up. And in this neighborhood, that someone is me.